Hey everybody, it's Pepper and Saturday. So other than sharing some of my humus cartoons with you, which I love to do when I find them, I also like to spend time with you talking about things that are timely and important as we see them featured in our lives or in some ways not pushed to the background or eroding a little bit as values and things that we see in the world today. And that's what brought me to the idea for this week's broadcast to talk about being versus doing, which seems like so simple and it seems like so obvious. And of course, we know the difference. And of course, we know that we need both of them. And of course, we know how to balance and juggle everything, right? Because we all have it all together and know what we're doing in life. I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, no, I don't. And I get things wrong and I confuse things and I repair things, restore things, decode things, find my way through the little mouse maze and start over again, sometimes all in one day. So maybe you can do things a little bit better than I can, but that's how it goes for me. But in the process of doing that, I discover more about myself. I discover more about life and what's important and how I can help others and participate in life a little bit more and maybe become a little bit more playful and fun, even though life seems so very challenging and difficult these days as well. So I came across being versus doing after I came up with one of those impossible lists. Maybe you've made some too. A friend of mine from long ago used to call those Virgo lists because she said it was a trait of the Virgo, this organization thing. And if we could just make enough lists and enough categories and work on them and cross them off one by one, that's how Virgos get ahead or succeed or understand life. So whenever I had these huge project to-do lists, she would always say, working on another Virgo list, a mental shopping list, or whatever it would be. So we'll call those lists and list people and things our doingness or doing cycle. And then we'll get around to talking about being and what that is and how we can balance all of that out. So there didn't always used to be so much confusion with the being versus doing. Life was almost automatically more understood or organized in such a way that we just knew that we would do some of these things and when we would do them, which isn't right or wrong. So there was time when we knew when work time was, if we had to work in the fields during agricultural times in our past. So there was times to work in the field. There were times when there was ritual or ceremony or family time or community time, and these were much more structured and more organized than they are too. In some ways, we have a lot more freedom now to decide whether we want to give community time or not, whether we want to give devotional time in spiritual or religious ways, where before that, we didn't always feel as if we had a choice in that way. So things have progressed in the way that they have. They've become less organized, less structured, less rigid to our advantage. But in other ways, we have been accelerated or pushed into doing things or feeling like we have to do different things. So we could say that all of that began to change in the industrial age, where production became more important. We had electricity, we had machinery, and we had more people willing to work those things. So production could go on at night because we had electricity. It wasn't only by daytime that we needed to see. So the industrial age changed everything. And then we went on to the computer age with automation and we could say, you know, robotics or everything else. And that changed everything even more. Computers changed everything because they processed things for us, measured things for us, coordinated things for us, and more and more and more that computers are doing that we don't have to do. But in some ways, when I think about it, I think it freed us from many concerns and working that we had to do. But in some ways, it also trapped us in this computer age, so that it seems like sometimes, maybe you feel this too, maybe it feels to you that sometimes we are working for our computers more than they are working for us. We are prisoners of our email accounts, and I find that I have to turn them off completely, not to look or not to feel like I need to respond immediately to the internet or to different communications that I get or to texts that we get. Long ago, when we hand wrote a letter and we mailed that letter, there was the expectation that it would be sent by train or by ship or sometimes by air. And we knew that it would be an appropriate time until the letter was received and until we received a response. So we had this different relationship with time itself. We allowed time between activities or time for things to happen. And now all those time scales have been shortened. So we send an email and we know that it's received the moment we hit that send button. It might not be read that quickly, but it has been received, and we are already in some ways expecting a response. We expect food to arrive sooner. We look for shorter cooking times, shorter driving times, flying times. Everything about time has been accelerated. And so we are internally and externally accelerating ourselves also. And there is this expectation, this understanding that that is how time goes. Hi to everyone who has joined us. Thank you for joining me live. I really appreciate our live connection, even though I know that a lot of people watch these videos later on too. So thank you. Anyway, so with all this acceleration of time and the understanding of how fast time travels, we have also then moved into space and space-time. So we now know that satellites, spaceships, shuttles, all these things travel through time faster than they used to. And so we have space-time travel and our own understanding that in some ways we're trying to catch up with the travel, catch up with technology, catch up to where we think we're supposed to be. And all this cognitive, linear, mind-based, science-based technology is all just moving us in this direction of doing, accomplishing, completing, and that success is measured by that, measured by how many things we could cross off these Virgo lists. And there's always this understanding that being is important too, but that we'll get to that. We will get to that at the end of our day. We'll get to it on the weekend. We'll get to some understanding of being or leisure activities when we have finished our work, except we never quite finish it. And so we're trying to play catch up, and this idea of being then gets moved further into the end of the day, or that we will get to it. And it seems that something is lost in the process, but we can't quite identify what it is that's lost or missing. And in the meantime, though, we're looking for where a certain quality of happiness went, or a certain way in which we knew ourselves better or liked ourselves better, or felt more comfortable at ease and in the world. So we can't quite put our finger on what is missing, but we know that something is. And so this being is something that we have set aside, a little bit because we have forgotten what it is, a little bit because we have forgotten where it is, how to find it, how to locate it again, and how to bring it centered. I'm going to talk about that too, so that we can, and maybe even find a few moments for classes where we can just do that together a little bit here and there as well. So let's just say, for the sake of definition, that doing is activity-based, success-based, productivity-based. There's a sense of accomplishment with it. Our jobs, our work, we feel good when we accomplish something. So it's all very, very important too. So if we say all that, then what can we say about being? So being, it's not meditation, it's not mindfulness, but there is a certain sense of presence to it. My being, or when I am in my being, there is a sense of flourishing. There is a sense that I am more in balance with my world, with what is above ground, above soil, as well as what's beneath it. So the roots of being, or the elements and minerals that feed the roots, that feed all of the things that are above ground. So being is sustenance. Being is nourishment from, you could say, our mind or our soul, our heart, our being, even at the gut level. There's so much talk about our gut microbiomes now. Well, there's being right there. So in this understanding then, so being is how we can carry ourselves in balance, so that we're not always running like mice on that hamster wheel, trying to catch up to some part of us that's already future thinking, comparing, measuring, all of that. So that is being. Being is like counter measure to measure. Being is balance. Being is in some way what Gaia used to call the higher frequency of doing. So when we are in our being, we are more comfortable with being human. When we are doing so much, it's almost like we're trying to automate ourselves to accomplish more or doing more. So being, part of our very description, human being, the being part is what allows us to feel comfortable with being human, to feel comfortable with perhaps the process of becoming, aging, becoming, maturing, discovering, uncovering, revealing to ourselves. All of these things are associated with being, centering ourselves and feeling centered in our world, a sense of belonging to a part of ourselves. I want to sometimes say a sense of co-authorship. And I say co-authorship because when we are in complete authorship, there's this I, me, authority. I am the author of my world. And it rarely feels that way. It always feels somehow that there's a co-pilot. And regardless of whatever you call that co-pilot, you might call it mindfulness or brain or activity or thoughtfulness or God or soul, whatever is appropriate for you. But it often feels in my life that there is a co-pilot, something I can commune with or integrate with, that then contributes to this wholeness. And when I think it's only me, it feels a little bit like that is too much of an assessment. So there's a kind of a description of beingness, and for all of its descriptions, it sounds so much like a rich tapestry, a rich soil to tap into. Why wouldn't we do that all the time, or at least as much as we are doing? And a part of that is that simply the world that we live in right now has a preference. It has a selective preference for doing versus being. There's a selective preference for working on the things that we can see and touch, those very tangible, productive things that we said from the beginning. Our world that we live in has a preference for those things right now. If it had a preference for being, we would notice that. So it's almost like, excuse me, there's this little bit of a struggle now. We hear mindfulness a lot. We are trying to find that presence, that beingness, and we're trying to have that and doing at the same time. And I think that's where there's a little bit of that disconnect, because we're talking a lot about mindfulness, and we're even talking about that a lot in the workplace. I have given talks in workplaces about mindfulness, and I can see everyone vigorously taking notes and then taking them back to their desk, and it doesn't always translate in the same way, because the preference is in the long run for how productive we can be. And so in order to find beingness, or to combine it with the doing, we have to give it a certain amount of importance. One of the things I tell people in the work environment, which almost seems counterintuitive but seems to work, is to add beingness to the to-do list, the work to-do list, on your work calendar, on your home calendar, on your iCal, on your smartphone, wherever it is that you make your shopping lists. Add being or beingness there, because it keeps it front and center, because it makes us pay attention to the fact that not only is it important enough to go on this list, but it's not crossed off yet. So we haven't done it. We haven't participated with it as well. And also that it can be done several times a day. Seems like the moment you cross it off your list, it should appear again at the bottom of the list again, kind of like a recurring kind of a thing. The lamas that I talk about often, that I know from my Buddhist center, they often talk about a one breath meditation. Basically, breathe in, pause, breathe out, exhale, pause, do again. And that in between that, the gap or the pause, or whichever one of those you want to call beingness or mindfulness, you have done it. Cross it off the list, add it to the bottom of the list again. It'll find its way creeping back up. So it seems in some ways that it would get less importance that way than what it deserves. But compared to keep saying, yeah, I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I didn't get to it today, but I'm going to. Yeah, I didn't make it to the gym, but I'm going to make it to the gym. It's really important to me. So we make it part of this recurring list, and it seems to come up. So we need to redevelop a relationship with being, with the human being, with being human, and with there being natural attributes to the humanness. And one of those attributes is that we be with each other, we be with ourselves, we integrate, we move inward with ourselves. That is a form of beingness. And that once we incorporate that being, we then move out again into the world from a place of being, which is also able to accomplish a great deal. When we are able to do that, the experience, without calling it a results-oriented effect, but we could see that when we are able to do that, there is a comfort level. We are comfortable in our skin more, so that the things that we do, we are better at. We are restored. We are replenished from within. We are centered. We are more compassionate. There is a small amount of freedom associated with it, a kind of freedom that's kind of a little bit hard to describe, but really worthwhile. And the actions that we then take from that place are more creative. There is a longevity associated with this kind of being. We feel a little bit more healthful. If I'm making this seem more than it is, I don't mean to. I'm describing some of the effects that I have known and continue to feel, enough that I wanted to share them with you as well. There is a sense of wellness. There is a sense of, there's a little bit less anxiety about how we feel about the world. It doesn't feel quite as much that the world is truly hanging on a thread and about to explode into something that we can't quite comprehend and have a little bit of fear about. There's this kind of background fear happening for almost everyone that I know right now. So when we allow ourselves to be human in this being kind of perspective, things settle down a little bit. The anxiety is much more in proportion to the largeness of life. And so all of these, I would say, are the benefit, some of the true benefit of being. So how do we accomplish that? How do we accomplish some of this balance so that we are able to do the things we need to do in life, respond in our way that we are our responsibilities that we have agreed to, that we have taken on, and at the same time that we don't lose ourselves in our process or lose our humanness about it, and that we can then reach out to others in that human way as well. So I find that there are times in the day that I am a little bit more prone to being, and you can see if they will work for you as well. Just after I have finished a comforting meal in which I'm not in a hurry to rush off to the rest of my to-do list, right after a meal, we have this feeling of satiety, which is a feeling of not being overfull, but we have eaten our fill. So there's this comfort associated with that. There's this comfort in our tummies. Our stomach is full enough. We have been nourished. We have eaten something. So there's less need, less craving for something in life, less need. And so right at that moment, before I then get on with the rest of my day or engagements, there's a moment there where I can just sit and relax into being. So there's nothing to do. It's not a meditation. It's not, there's no theory or practice involved in it. But before rushing off to do something else, during this feeling where you're feeling very satisfied and comfort about what you have just received, we can just let that spread a little bit from our stomach, from our gut, from wherever it is, that place of fullness, to allow that fullness to extend into other areas of our life so that we can feel full, satisfied, that same feeling of satisfaction, see if it can be applied to other areas of life where or before we run off into, I need to do this, I didn't do that, this better happen, something like that. So that's one of the times that works for me. If I wake up early and I don't have an immediate commitment that morning, if I can allow myself before, during, or after that first cup of coffee or whatever it is that you receive your day with, that's another time of simple being. It's a simple time, a moment of simplicity. Again, not a meditation or anything else, but a ritual. It's a ritualized moment. You probably do the same thing in the morning, or in the evening. So those times of ritual also are a throwback to many, many years or even lifetimes ago, where ritual was much more important in our life and happened as greeting the sunrise or the sunset. So moments of ritual are also moments in which being is much more easy to recognize than at other times. So a moment's recognition of being is very helpful. I am more able to recognize being when I'm in my favorite chair, a chair that I sit on to do leisure activities or read. I am more apt to do it in my garden or outdoors. I'm sure you have certain places too. There are certain scents, essential oils or certain scents that allow me to tap into being quickly. It's almost like I breathe something in a certain scent and it takes me right to a being place just for a moment. The nice thing about being is that it's not something you need to devote large amounts of time to. So being is self-restorative. It is resource and source. It is fluid. It is informal. It is instantly recognizable, other than sometimes in meditation where you feel like you kind of need to get to the certain space. You kind of need to breathe or do or sit there long enough to get to that place that you know, and then try to sustain that. Being is very instantaneous. There is a recognition of self, of authorship, a certain knowing, oh yes, this is me. Sometimes there's just a few words that I say along those lines. I am here. I am here. I recognize myself. I have arrived. I recognize this time and space and place as my own. So there is a placeness associated with being, a way that you recognize that you take up not a lot of room in the world, but you take up a certain amount of space and time in the world, which is your own. It is yours. This is your place and your time in the world. It's a sense of belonging. I belong to this time and to this place. For as long as I'm here in the world, this is my time and my place, and my belonging goes along with that. So when you have that recognition, there's like I said earlier, a certain freedom, and there's also this little spark of creativity that you sometimes feel when you recognize that as well. And it carries you. It's a little bit uplifting. You will walk a little bit lighter on your feet that day, and it's very restorative as well. So something else that I do, and this is not, this is more exercise-like, but again, it's very simple and takes but a moment, is to make a full connection with your own body, with your own being. And so it's like making a full circuit. So 2 hands on the higher chest, both hands on the heart, both hands on the solar plexus, on in the stomach region, not pressing in. It's just a connection. So it's a sense that you have connected. It's a full contact, if you like. You can also separate the hands. You know, sometimes you can put one on forehead, higher heart again, and you can switch those, and you can see how you can feel. I sometimes also turn around and hold my, wrap around my knees this way. If I'm barefoot or have just some comfortable socks on, can't see this, but holding your feet, both hands holding your feet, your ankles. So all those things that make just a complete connection, a complete circuit, almost instantly will take you into your being, your beingness, your humanness. And if you can't do that because you think you're in public and it's just too noticeable, too eye-catching, you can place your awareness on any of your chakras or all of them just for a moment. Just run them down, or just with your simple awareness, a warming of the heart. All of these things almost immediately will bring a recognition of being. None of these things take away from the things that we need to do in our life, or the things that we are responsible for, or things we've committed to. But how we go about doing them, if we can balance more of that being, it would be better. It's kind of up to us to do this. Other than these little slogans that we see around us about mindfulness and about all these things, and other than the books we read or our own practice, if you have one, life is not going to give us too many reminders that that is the most helpful thing to do. Life, because we are moving in this direction of Aquarius, as I've said some way, which is very much mind, technology, science, and linearity, all of that. Since life is moving us more quickly in that direction, it's going to be up to us to find that counterbalance so that we can stay in balance between the two. Life in the external world will continue to remind us to buy whatever products are on sale or popular, or convince us that they are necessary in some way. It will continue to remind us that we have messed up our world, or us, or they, or someone has messed something up that we may or may not be able to fix in our lifetime. The signs and symbols are everywhere now. The world in some ways has, first it ignored climate change, and now it has latched onto it so that it seems as if everything is imminently going to end or crash, and that it's our fault. And what are we or you going to do about it? So again, it's really important for us to find that center and see that there is a place within us which is centered and fine and expansive and able to enlarge our heart and our compassion for ourselves, for our world, and even for those that push in upon that as well in that compassionate way. So it's up to us, and that's why I like spending this time with you and sharing this as little reminders, and hopefully do this more often. This that I'm talking about today is actually kind of an excerpt of an article that I wrote, and I think I will be putting it into a newsletter here soon. So if you're on my mailing list, you will get that with maybe fuller, more expansive, complete sentences. And so if you're not on my mailing list, please join it. You can do it here on Facebook or on my website and see what else I post there as well, so we can talk about these and other things as well. And maybe lastly for today, I would just say that I've gotten a lot of your emails about some of the classes that I said were coming up. The Wisdom of the Birds is the one I keep getting the most comments on. And I'm just working on putting it together so that we can do it over the internet, so that I can customize it and be with you. So you'll be getting some notices about that very soon as well, on how we can all do that together. So I promised everyone who's been asking about that, it's coming. And I think anything else that I have to say about this beingness will probably be in that article. But I'm looking at some of your comments and thanking you for them. And if anyone has any questions about this topic or others or anything kind of related, I'm kind of here. I'm looking at your comments. I'm saying hi to people I know. I know Anne from Germany, and I'm thinking Vicky is in India, I think, if I've got that if I've got that correct. John, I'm not sure where you live, but I know I've seen you here before, and thank you. And Sheila, you seem new to me as well, and I'm not sure where you are. So if you don't have questions that I can see in this way, then I'll be checking for them later, and you can replay this later. And again, look for a newsletter soon, or check out the other videos. And as I leave you, I am going to go, it's springtime here in the US, in Oregon where I am. I'm going to go out into the garden where I'm planting veggies today. So wish me good luck. And I'll see you again soon. Okay, thank you for your time, for your wisdom, for your participation in the world, in my world, for our communications, friendship. You are my my family, my community. I always say that. I truly mean it. And I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.